The last match of the evening was the last man standing match for the World Heavyweight title number 3 with Seth Franklin Rollins against Shinsuke Nakamura. And Brian, I mentioned that I was going to invoke the Marx Brothers principle about this match. And you're a big Marx Brothers fan.
Massive.
And I thought of this because as I was trying to sit through this, watching them do everything that every other fucking outlaw, independent goofball does in these garbage matches, I thought of the Marx Brothers. And for those of you who don't know, the Marx Brothers, before they got in the movies, they were huge stars in vaudeville, but then they were the biggest comedy stars on Broadway. And they were starring in plays on Broadway in the big theaters. As a matter of fact, the first few movies, 4 or 5 that they made, were adaptations of their Broadway plays.
I actually just got a book. So it's here in my office by Robert S. Bader, 4 of the 3 Musketeers. It's a history of the Marx Brothers on stage.
And they were brilliant. They were some of the biggest stars in the business at the time. And they were unique. They had some of the best comedy writers of the day, George S. Kaufman and Sid Perelman and fucking Bert Ruby and all these people. The writers would give them the premise. They'd put them in a hotel resort, or they'd put them in a foreign country, or they'd put them at the goddamn opera house or whatever. And they would write a script where they had interaction with these other characters. And then they would hand it to the Marx Brothers. And the Marx Brothers would do their fucking thing with it because they were unique. Nobody could be the Marx Brothers. Nobody could do that shit. And the Marx Brothers individually were all unique. Groucho was the wise ass. Chico was the fucking shady guy. Harpo was the goddamn, the mute, playful, boyish charm guy. And they all had different, Zeppo was Zeppo. And they all had different talents. They all stood out. But the point is, there's a story that may be apocryphal. It may be true. They were on Broadway one night in a theater, and one of the writers is in the back talking to one of the critics, and they're having a conversation, and suddenly the writer tells the guy, says, shut up. I think I just heard one of the original lines. Because it was still the same location and the same set and the same characters named the same thing, but the Marx Brothers would do their own shit with it. And that's why it made it completely unique. And nothing else was like it. And in wrestling, the relationship between the booker and the top talent used to be the same way. The booker will give you the premise, why you're mad or what you're fighting over, and suggestions of the interaction you could have. And he'll tell you what characters are involved in this particular issue. But then he would tell the top talent to do it, and they would all do it differently. Because every talent had been trained and come up in a different place, in a different territory, had wrestled multitudes of different people, established their own style, their own gimmick, their own look. Yes, the Mighty Igor and Ivan Putski did the same thing, but not at the same time in the same territory, in different parts of the country. And that's what made wrestling so different. You could go from territory to territory, and even if you were seeing the same guys, they looked different because they were selling different styles of wrestling. And I'm not talking about lucha and hardcore. I'm talking about, is it brawling? Is it more athletic? Is it more technical work or whatever? We've talked about this. But everybody did the shit differently. And there was some parameters and rules of the road for what you couldn't do before you made the business complete horse shit. And those were enforced by the bookers and the promoters. And otherwise, that's why there was such variety, and you enjoyed watching all these different people have all these different matches. But now it's like when they have these garbage, hardcore weapons matches or no DQ, lazy booking, stipulations out the ass, it's like everybody, no matter who they are, what they look like, what their background is, or what their style is, are trying to be the Marx Brothers because they do the same shit. Everybody, you can call it. And I mean, 30 seconds into this thing, Seth was pulling out a kendo stick. After 45 seconds, they were out on the floor where the crowd was already chanting, "We want tables," because the furniture is more over in this situation than any of the talent. And then in 2 minutes, they've peeled the pad off the floor and they were using the stairs. And we have suddenly, on this show, gone from a match that was all psychology to a match that's none. It's not even hand-to-hand combat. It's not a sporting event. It's not even imitation wrestling. It's just guys going out and having a big budget movie fight scene for 30 fucking minutes. After 3 minutes on the floor, then Seth throws the chairs and the garbage can in the ring and pulls out 2 tables and throws them in and sets that up. And then they go back out to the floor and walk fight around the ring. And then Nakamura gets foam nunchucks and hits Seth. He hit him in the back and he hit him in the legs with nunchucks. And then he drops the nunchucks on purpose to charge Seth and run into his boot. Brian, if you've got nunchucks in your fucking hand and nobody's stopping you from using them, you gonna put them down to charge at the fucking guy?
I wouldn't, and he seemed like a master of the nunchucks too.
So then the heel put the garbage can over the baby face and piñatas him with the stick. That's backwards. That's what in a garbage match with the baby face does to the fucking heel in a comeback. Who wants to cheer the heel trying to bash fucking Rollins' head in? But that's what it was. Every modern indie garbage match, but with no blood and a slower pace and a bigger budget. And it's just over and over. There's so much junk in the ring. They got to work and walk around it. First time they tried to run shaky through the table, it didn't break. Then they set a ladder up by the announcer's desk and teased a spot, but they'll come back to that. Then they went in the back of the arena, and here, Seth Rollins in the course of this match is going to take a bump on a real announcer's table off a ladder, and he's going to go through another real table at the finish, and they set up a crash pad so he could take a bump off the bleachers. They fight back to the back of the arena and up the stairs into the bleachers and get on the, and they're showing you the crash pad on camera. And what else would it be? They've got a cloth over the top of it and black draping around the edge of it, but it is a completely open 12 by 12 foot surface 2 feet off the ground with nothing sitting on it that it is not at a place where it can be used as a stage, has no equipment sitting on it. And coinkadinkly, they fight to the exact location when Seth gets knocked off the fucking bleachers. He falls on it and bounces. What was that supposed to be, Brian, besides a crash pad?
Not a crash pad, a area, a platform, a interview platform.
It was on camera more than goddamn the wrestlers were. They wouldn't get it out of the shot. The only thing, when he landed on it, they had the cameras set just so that you'd see his body bounce, but not what he landed on. Then he rolled off. Then they got the shot of him on the floor. But while they're shooting him on the floor, he's laying next to a crash pad. Just don't take the bump. You're taking other bumps through shit. You don't need to take an extra bump, especially on a crash pad. And at that point, I said, fuck it, I'm fast forwarding. I'm getting to the finish of this thing because I'm getting pissed because it's just garbage. I can't say it doesn't take talent because being a stunt man in the movies takes talent. But there is nothing related to wrestling or the concept of wrestling or what wrestling traditionally has been for 100 years from this. This would be great as a 3-minute angle where they get out of control and they fight around and they take one of these bumps. But in 30 minutes with the sticks and the cans and the chairs and the tables and the phoniness and the obvious cooperation. And at the end, finally, they broke a table, finally. And they finally pushed Seth off the ladder and he went through the announce desk. And then they fought in the back of the arena again. And they went through another fucking table. And that's when Seth finally won. 30 fucking minutes. Can you eat the best filet mignon in the world for 4 fucking hours straight before you're tired of filet mignon? And this wasn't no filet. I could still see the marks where the jockey was beating this steak.
Well, hopefully this is the end of the Nakamura-Seth Rollins feud.
And on the entrances, there's people that have fucking epileptic seizures that weren't jerking and twitching and convulsing like these two. Talk about a fucking complimentary gimmick. One guy fucking, it looks like he's being electrocuted on the way to the ring. And then here comes the other guy, and he looks like he's wearing electric clothing.
Yeah, the other guy saw that and said, that's a good idea. I should try that.
Yeah. But I mean, I just, and they're risking injury. The more you give people this shit, the more they expect it. That's why now every time they see somebody pull out a weapon, they start chanting for tables. In the territory days, you broke tables. But in a particular town, maybe a couple times a year. And on TV, maybe the same. But now it's constant. It's a cliche. It's a parody. The furniture and the bullshit. That's what they have ruined the business by doing this so much because it gets the cheap pops that now people expect it rather than are thrilled with the anticipation of it. It's like if they didn't get it, they'd be disappointed. And that's the worst psychology of all the bad psychology in wrestling today. If the people don't get excessive amounts of shit that you shouldn't do that much of, they'll feel disappointed because you've done it for so long. What the fuck?
Well,
that's my thoughts.
That was Fastlane. 5 matches, 3 hours.
248 to be exact, I believe.
Relatively painless, especially if you have the option to fast forward.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't a big show. It was a big show in name only. Nothing was offensive except for the last match, which is just fucking stupid. But they didn't make any ridiculous mistakes, and the points that they needed to make, they got over. It takes a long time. As we've said, this is completely a tale of neither one of the AEW or WWE products resembles professional wrestling anymore, but they've gone in completely different directions. But again, we see which one is winning and by at ever widening margins. So I got to go with it. They're going with the stars and the fucking budget.
Hey, listen, no matter what you want to say, AEW returns to a town. The crowd is much smaller. WWE returns to a town right now. They're selling out. They're setting records everywhere they go.
And boy, have people's expectations lowered to this point where they're happy to go and watch these shows. The WWE shows, I mean. They're happy to go and sit there through 3 hours of Raw where almost nothing happens, and they get talked to for 2 of the 3 hours, and they pay more money than ever to do it. I wish it had been this easy to draw money when I was in the business, where we didn't actually have to go out and fucking act like we meant it and do exciting shit. Just go fucking cut promos for 25 minutes. That could have been my thing.
And instead of people trying to attack you or getting mad at you, they could just stand there with a smile on their face and yell boo while you talk.
Yes. That wouldn't have been any fun at all. I wouldn't have lasted fucking 6 months in the wrestling business if it was today, because I would have fucking screamed and torn my hair out and said, I got to get away from this shit.
Here's the thing, too. People say, like, oh, look, that's a great example of Don Callis' heat. No, with Dominic Mysterio, because his character was a putz, it's a way of the crowd disrespecting someone they don't like. With Don Callis, it's a bunch of fans smiling like, yeah, he's the bad guy, let's boo him. That's not heat.
Yeah, let's see about 3 or 4 drunk motherfuckers coming under the goddamn ropes at the same time to get you and see if you feel like that's the same kind of reaction as boo at you. Conan! I think that's a little bit more trepidatious a position to be in than just the fans are booing over your live promo. I've been in both situations, and the first one, the people coming under the ropes out of the crowd, made me more nervous.